What if your burnout, your libido loss, even your anxiety isn't a hormone issue at all? What if it's coercive control? Today, we are joined by Dr. Jordin Wiggins, a naturopathic physician who helps high achieving women uncover the hidden power dynamics that keep them stuck in toxic relationships. If you have ever felt confused, blamed yourself, or tried everything to fix a relationship that you wouldn't change, this conversation may shift everything for you. Have you ever felt something was wrong but couldn't explain it? Like the person you love was slowly chipping away at your sense of self?
We've been there. Different marriages, but to the same man, with the same toxic pattern. But God was still working.
We're Lizzie and Dina, women of faith, survivors, and truth tellers.
Surviving toxic relationships is for any woman stuck in confusion, healing after betrayal, or searching for her voice again.
You are not crazy.
You are deeply loved. Hey everybody, welcome to today's episode of Surviving Toxic Relationships. Today we have an amazing guest with an incredible story. Her name is Dr. Jordin Wiggins. She's a naturopathic physician, an author of The Pink Canary, and host of The Pleasure Principles, a top 1% podcast. She helps high-achieving women who seem to have it all, but are secretly struggling in a sexless marriage, trapped in a toxic relationship, or rebuilding after divorce. Drawing from both her clinical experience and her own story of leaving a sociopath and co-parenting through abuse, Jordin teaches women how to stop overfunctioning, recognize coercive control, and create what she calls pleasure-centered relationships. So welcome today. We are so happy to have you on our show and can't wait to get all those nuggets that you have. Thank you. You want us to call you Doctor or Jordin?
Jordin's great.
Okay. Thanks, Jordin.
Thank you for having me. I like it when I get to talk about the personal and the clinical all in one show. So I'm excited.
It just makes it relatable and something that other people can relate to, and it makes it nice too.
It really does. And I'm super into the naturopathic world. I'm in school for that too. And so I just love that you have that dual approach to the physical dysfunction that women can go through, but also now you have this deep understanding of the mental and emotional component that can be caused by these toxic relationships. So take it away. We're just going to let you tell your story.
Okay. Well, I grew up in a home where I felt loved when I was achieving. Didn't really feel comfortable having feelings. It was always, work hard at school, do really well at sports. And that became kind of my identity. That if I was keeping everyone around me happy, I was safe. If I could think 10 steps ahead for people, then, they wouldn't abandon me and everything would be good. So that's kind of, that laid the foundation for where I am today and what I do today in my professional life as well. So I became a naturopathic doctor, really, really wanted to help women with hormones, and I won't bore you with the details. They're in my book, The Pink Canary, if you want to know like the backstory of my health. But I wanted to provide adequate health care for women because they were just burnt out. There wasn't correct lab testing done. Things have improved quite a lot, not in the conventional model, but in the naturopathic functional medicine side of things, they've improved a lot. But I thought, I don't want any woman to feel like I felt. So that was sort of which was alone and not supported and feeling like I didn't have answers, suppressed by a patriarchal system not meant for women. Go figure. So I opened a women's health clinic, and that was better than my wildest dreams. But what kept happening is those women's experience was mirroring my own. And that was, they weren't happy. They were in sexless marriages, and they couldn't really figure it out. They couldn't put their finger on it. Like, I have a great job. I've got kids. Like, what's wrong with me? Why can't I just be happier? Why can't I just want sex? So again, blaming themselves and working harder to try to fix things, which was exactly where I was at. I had everything in life that I ever said I wanted. The goals that I set for myself, I'd achieved. And then I was sort of looking around going, is this it? Like, is this? I wasn't really happy and couldn't put my finger on it. So that sort of started my path down the pleasure, desire, sexual dysfunction, and libido really became my thing, because I realized that if women are stressed out and they're in fight or flight, they're overwhelmed, or other side of that coin is kind of like depressed, numb, shut down, naturally our reproduction shuts down. We don't have a lot of desire. We don't have arousal like we used to. So I learned from that we needed to focus on burnout, our relationship to pleasure. And that's when I started the Pleasure Collective. And 1 in 2 women globally has sexual dysfunction. But now I would like to know how many of those women are also in emotionally abusive, coercive, controlling relationships. But I didn't know that yet. So anyways, the Pleasure Collective was amazing, but women were coming in like thousands of them, right? And this was back like 2019, 2020, before Goop did their documentary on pleasure, and talking about women's pleasure and fulfillment was even more taboo then. I feel like we've come a long way with women's sexual health and even sex toys for women. And there's been so many advances in that side of things. But there was these groups of women that I still couldn't help. And again, it was mirroring myself and my own journey. Women that when life got stressed, so they could work on their pleasure beliefs, change their relationship, work on putting things in their day, in their life that was for them, because they're generally over functioning, people pleasing, thinking 10 steps ahead for everybody else, just like I was as a child, just adult version. And then it's compounded, right? Because we have children now, and sometimes we have parents that we have to care for, and a marriage. And it's just our focus is on everyone else at all times. So that's when actually, let me back up one step. So I didn't have the language for it then. I didn't even know then that there was a such thing as super traits and there was a such thing as coercive control or emotional abuse. I was still very much in my high achiever fix mode. I thought if I can just say the right thing or learn the right sex technique or breath work, that it's going to help me and it's going to help all my clients. But what I did not know to look for was, what is the environment that these women are in? What is the system that is creating the sexual dysfunction or the hormone issues or the weight gain? I was always focused on her, the individual. And like, that's what you're taught in medical school. They don't teach you, hey, wait a second, if this patient is coming to you with, so we can use my example, I had what could be diagnosed as PMDD for the first time in my life, premenstrual dysphoric disorder, where the week before my period, I thought I was losing it. I couldn't sleep. I would have hot flashes. And I was like 36 at the time, like not in perimenopause does happen for some women in their 30s. So want to normalize that. But I'd never had anything like this in my life. And I also had these episodes of extreme vomiting and diarrhea that no one could diagnose. And like, I couldn't diagnose. I was going to specialists, something that I'm paid to do. And I had a medical clinic where patients would fly in to be treated by me. And I couldn't figure out what was going on with myself. So long story short, for the sake of time, or long story long, I guess, in this case, I was in an abusive relationship. And, tens of thousands of dollars spent on medical care, on therapy, on couples therapy, personal development work that I was doing on myself. And nobody saw it. Excuse me, our fourth therapist saw it. And at that point, I'd already spoken to a lawyer and was trying to plan my escape. But yeah, lots. This needs to be a book, not a little podcast episode. But that's so sort of the lens that I look at things through today on the clinical women's health side of things. And guess what? Now I don't have PMDD anymore. Didn't have it before. Didn't have it then. And I'm not saying that PMDD exists. It is a medical diagnosis. The symptoms are real. The experience is real. And we need to do labs and look at hormones and have adequate diagnosis. And in my opinion, we also need to be screening for coercive control and toxic relationships. So that's kind of the lens that I look at things through now.
I love that. I love that. Now, question, back when this first started happening to you, did you know you were in an abusive relationship?
No, not a clue. And I used to say that with shame. I used to feel so much shame. How could this happen to me? I'm educated. I help women fix their marriages for a living, whether it's through prescribing vaginal estrogen so they can have less painful sex, or whether it's helping them, change their relationship to pleasure and learn what kind of sex they want and that kind of thing. I was like, how did this happen to me? And I used to have so much shame around that until I read Sandra Brown's work, and she talks about a concept called super traits. I've modified it a little bit for the population of women that I work with. But basically, her concept is that women with really high empathy, really high loyalty, very hardworking, very responsible, very independent. So I was reading her research and going, yes, like check that box. Yes, yes, yes. And those were my clients as well. So by having these super traits, it makes you essentially more prone to getting ensnared in these toxic relationships, because that's our worldview. And also people that are abusive or personality disordered, they kind of seek out women with super traits. So when I could kind of put those pieces together and then turn around and use them to help women, a lot of it just saying like, this is not your fault. And also go through my client list for the women that, things got better with working with me and they were happy with that because it was better than they thought it ever could be. But it wasn't that, big fix that I wanted for them. And then I'd come back to them and I'm like, can you take this super trait quiz? And can you take my coercive control quiz? And then they were scoring off the charts on both. And I was like, oh, okay, we need to talk.
Wow.
This is why it didn't work.
Okay, so you have a quiz for your patients to see if they fall in that category.
Yes,
and then
I'll give you the link for the listeners for the super trait quiz to
That'd
see how
fantastic.
high they rank. Yeah, it's just so relieving. And I have women emailing me all the time and they're like, well, you called this one. This is me.
Wow.
And some that it's not either, but it's a really good differentiating factor. And if women have super traits, how I approach treatment clinically or on the sexual pleasure and intimacy side, it's completely different.
So how do you treat them then if you find out that they answered yes to both of those tests?
Well, it depends this is the naturopathic answer. It depends on what they want. A lot of people think that, once they realize, oh, I'm being coercively controlled or I have super traits, I'm in a toxic relationship, that they need to leave immediately or something. But that's never what I want. I want it to be, first of all, an awareness piece and a piece of, this is me, this is who I am, usually based on, childhood trauma of some kind, having an emotionally unavailable parent or a parent with an addiction issue or a sibling that was high needs and they were sort of parentified at a young age and learned to achieve and control, then they can sort of say, I see these dynamics and this is why traditional couples therapy didn't work for me, because it doesn't address the power dynamics in coercive control. And generally the person with super traits is blamed. I hear that every single day. And it honestly makes me sick to think of how many women with super traits go with the intention of healing and working on things, and they're not really the problem, but they're made out to be the problem. So it's basically deciding what the person wants to do. And there's two streams there, which one is just move forward with the awareness of this is not my fault, or this relationship dynamic is not something that is up to me to fix. And it's my super traits that have made me stay in it, work really hard at it, think that if, I can just do this one thing, it'll fix it. So that awareness sometimes is enough for people. And that's great for me, because I would have saved years of my life, tens of thousands of dollars, if somebody would have said, hey, this is coercive control. There is nothing you can do to fix it. Mind you, I probably would have still tried or looked up coercive control to figure out how to hack it. But at least I would have had the correct answer, right? It wasn't an attachment style. It wasn't, his neurodivergence, or there's just all these excuses they're put around it. So that awareness is one piece. Or if they want to learn how to heal their super traits, which is essentially what I teach, and that's how to create pleasure-centered relationships that are mutual. And this is in and out of the bedroom. And it's in all areas, generally, with the women that I work with. It's in their careers, their overgiving to their kids. It's not just their intimate partnership, right? It's friendships, it's all of it. Because if you are truly with an abuser or somebody that is personality disordered, that's not changing. It won't change no matter what we do. I never want women to feel forced into making a decision or, having to do something about it. But learning to be able to center ourselves and center mutual fulfillment and mutual satisfaction is what I teach women to do, because we've been so focused on everyone else our whole lives if we have super traits.
Wow, that
That's
is
just fascinating. I think awareness is such a huge impact. I was married twice, but we had so much confusion. We too were in that same boat of what do I need to work on? What can I work on? Maybe I should have done this differently or said this differently. And then, it does affect the intimacy because you're like, don't touch me. But it just bleeds into everything. And just adding this component of just even sexuality, I was like, wow, that is pretty impactful of the layers that toxic relationships can do to a person, and especially the fixer. Again, if they come to seek you, they're trying to fix themselves. And I think that me and Dina both can look at each other and say that we probably did different things to fix and be people pleasing. And then, these women, including ourselves, you get to the point that your extreme burnout is almost debilitating in a season that is really dark. And you realize that all those little layers, you've been living in a fog. You got to clear your head. And truthfully, the only way I see people do get really clear-headed is when they are able to step out.
Yeah, thank you. And I had to get out to have the fog fully cleared. I couldn't, even though I'd have awareness and moments of clarity, and that was the long path. And sometimes I'm helping women set up that path, right? And by focusing on themselves and what makes them feel good, and what foods do they like, what music do they like, what clothes do they like to wear, just those simple things that can get so scrambled when you are in a toxic relationship in the fog. And I have them do these like little pleasure anchors throughout the day, like things that they do for them come hell or high water. They are doing those acts that make them feel good. And just that can be radical for somebody like deeply in it. But usually I'm working with the women that are like, okay, get me out, or I'm out and I don't want to repeat it again. So, how do I heal my super traits so that I'm not making these same mistakes? Because we think we're going to get out and we've learned and we have the awareness. But when our nervous systems still believe that our value is based on how much we give to another person, and we can't tolerate their discomfort, we think we have to fix it. And our go to is to sort of erase ourselves and center them. We're just going to get out of one relationship and get into another and have different shades of the same thing go on. Like it's not going to look exactly the same. So, really setting them up for how to not get in a relationship that's extractive, how to get in one that's mutually beneficial. Not that it's ever our fault that we were abused or in a toxic relationship. Like that was someone else's choice to take advantage of us and our super traits and, you know, our kindness and our loyalty and our hard work. And they just like that was an intentional choice for them. And I wish we talked about that part more because I feel like we give a lot of passes with, oh, it's, you know, childhood trauma or hurt people. It's like, no, they do it because it benefits them. They do it because they have more power and control and they know what they're doing. And they just pretend that they don't when they get called on it kind of thing. So,
And when people say hurt people, Dina knows that's one of my pet peeves because it gives excuses for them to hurt the person that supposedly they love the most or whatever else. And I just struggle with that term. And it maybe I say that to other people and some agree with me and some don't.
I can't stand that.
I know. It's
It
become
gives
this
the abuser a pass.
over and over again, too. If they keep getting passes, they just go on to the next victim. Or they stay with you and just keep re-traumatizing you. I mean, as women, and like you said, women with super traits with this high empathy and deep understanding and the ability to put yourself in their shoes, if they tell you they had a terrible abusive childhood, and maybe they did, I'm not saying that they didn't have things in their childhood that were legitimate, but the obvious purposeful manipulation, the breaking down of your sense of self, the breaking down of your close friends, you know, your identity, your pleasures, your needs, you know, even like your business, even, you know, things that you've built that you're proud of. You want to go to work or you want to achieve and they talk you out of it. You know, let's do something for the family. It's like everything they do, like you said, it is intentional. It is intentionally pulling you into more of a controlled position so that they can have more dominance and make sure that they are always the one that you need and that you have to have. And I'm so glad you said that because you know, yes, you can have empathy for somebody that's been through a hard time, but we've all been through hard times, you know, and we just have to at some stage in our adult life own that, find out how to move past it and not traumatize somebody else or harm somebody else because of our problems. We all have that.
Exactly. And generally speaking, people with super traits, they just want to do good and care for people and love them. And then they assume, like I wrongly assumed, that other people feel that way too. And if we could just love them enough or make them feel safe enough, then the relationship can go back to being like it was on the good days. And I think that's the other
Yes.
part. My lawyer said to me, love her. She's one of the good ones, but still not trauma informed, has no idea of the depths and how triggering some of the stuff that she says is. She said to me, probably the third time she said it, like, how did you get tangled up with him? I just don't understand how somebody with you ends up like with somebody like him. But it's like, I didn't know there was a criminal record. I didn't like and it's victim blaming in a statement like that, because she's saying like, I don't understand it, explain it to me. And it's really important to understand that who they pretend to be at the beginning, and even saying like, oh, she missed the red flags, or like, it's all victim blaming, and it all allows abusers or people seeking power over somebody else to keep doing what they're doing, because it blames the victim and it gives the victim a ton of shame. So, and she also doesn't understand that, there's good days and good moments too.
And sometimes a lot of them. I mean, really, truly a lot of them. I think that's what a lot of people don't understand. It's not like we're experiencing this every single day. That would be easy. After 6 months or less, you'd be gone because you can't live like that every day. But I mean, there are wonderful times, and there's the whole love bombing, right? And there's all the beautiful things that they do, and there's the apologies, and there's the I'll do betters with a lot of them that are very, very good at being manipulative and con men, like mine and Lizzie's ex. My ex would go for a long time on decent behavior, and things would repair and heal and get better. And there was a sense of hope. And, he said he didn't want to be that way, and he would apologize, all the things. And so, you just had no choice but to believe that this was a hurting person who wanted to be better and needed you there as a stabilizing force and someone who loved and cared about them, and that they were going to get to the other side. And you could see the good in them all the time, even when it wasn't manifesting. So yes, 100%. People don't understand unless they're in it. They just don't get it.
And I feel horrible as a clinician looking back over 12 years where I didn't see this. And there were so many cases, and a few can come to mind. A woman that was like 42 and had a heart attack. And it was, out of the blue, one of these like medical anomalies. And I knew through like traditional Chinese medicine and everything, her husband had had an affair. So I knew that there was like issues, emotional issues leading up to that or whatever. But I bet if I dug deeper, I gave her these quizzes, she would tick all those boxes. I had another woman with extreme digestive issues that wouldn't resolve. And I would take it personally from the like, I'm the person that solves this. I'm the person that when they've been to every specialist and nobody can figure it out, like I will figure it out for them. So a few that I couldn't really solve. Anyways, her husband ended up murdering her, actually. Yeah. Yeah.
My-
After they had separated. But I didn't know to screen for the abuse that I was taught to screen for was rape and like the violent
Yeah.
incident model, right?
Yeah.
So, but just we do such an inadequate job for women and children for screening
Yeah.
for abuse and toxic relationships.
I sometimes wonder if it's because we call it domestic violence. That violence really messes with people's head, because I know that I've lost a friend from domestic violence, so to speak, but she never was physically abused. He just realized she was getting ready to leave, and he killed her. And all I said was, "Thank you for keeping me in the loop when she told me she was leaving that weekend. Let me know, I'll be praying for you and keep me posted." Next day, I found out she had died that night. You're right, we don't do a good service, but you know what? That's why you're doing what you're doing. That's why we're doing what we're doing. We had to learn not only from our own painful journey, like you said, I think we all suffered that shame, that guilt, and all those feelings that get tied in it, because we were walking in a path of confusion. So nothing was clear, and we weren't taught, like you said, we were taught like like you said, the real
Yeah. Oh, he
violence.
doesn't
Yeah,
hit me. So
yeah.
this isn't abuse.
It'd be easy if we were all hit. It's just amazing and heartbreaking, and that right there scars. When you've lost somebody, it leaves a scar that doesn't really heal. So
Yeah, there's so
sorry.
much grief,
Yes.
and the fact that I didn't even know that abuse often escalates post separation as a clinician. Like, what? I went to school for 8 years. I have 2 degrees. Anyways, it is so backwards to me, but it's important now that even behavioral issues in children and things that are going on with my daughter and her pulling out her hair and the accidents that she had, like the timeline, and it's very clear when you look at it through a coercive control lens what is happening. But if you don't know and she's at skating or dance or something and she's not paying attention because she's in a freeze response, or she's being really silly because that hyperactivity, like after a visit or something traumatic that happens, you can be quick to write it off as behavioral, right? Oh, she's not listening, but it's a trauma response. So, yeah, a lot of my clients and seeing what happens with their children and how they're labeled, or the issues that they go on to have, behavioral or addiction, it's just like this could all be prevented if we really dealt with what was going on and people had the support at the right time.
Absolutely. And you know what? I know we all three of us, you can't come away from those situations without having some sort of regret one way or another. But really in life, all you can do is move forward with what you have, all the knowledge and wisdom that you've gained through that really awful experience. Now you move forward. And that's exactly what you're doing, which is wonderful. Like you could have just said, I don't want to re-traumatize myself. I don't want to live there anymore. I'm done with that. And you could have just gone back to your practice and just kind of done the same things, to escape it all. But you aren't.
Thought of that option. I'm like, I don't know if I can hold the weight of this for women every day.
Especially when you've experienced it. Now you're having to relive it. I know Lizzie and I, when we talk on these podcasts, we're having to, in many ways, go back and re-feel and relive some of those things. And it's heavy. It's so much easier just to live that lightweight, carefree, that was behind me and it's in my rearview mirror and I don't deal with it ever again. But then what about the other people out there? What if you could warn them, save them, help them escape, give them flags before they even get into these relationships? What if you can do that? You can't just avoid the heaviness. And so my point is, Jordin, thank you that you took that road, because your experience as a clinician, in addition to this experience, is, talk about powerful before and having a full clinic before. This is incredible. Thank you that you took that high road.
And you're part of the team to help close the gaps, because we know that 4 people die a day from domestic violence, and many of them showed no bruises. And through making awareness, hopefully one day we can keep closing that gap.
Yeah, because domestic violence doesn't always look like what they say it always looks like. It's so different. Anyway, I know we're gonna have to close in a minute, but I there was a question I was really dying to ask you that I think our audience would also be asking, and that would be, you have a quiz for coercive control. Can you give our audience just some definitions or signs that you could be in a relationship in this coercive control, and what to look for, maybe even things from your own personal experience?
I'll talk about, mine first. I felt confused all the time. And I was never a person that was confused. And I remember sitting on the bed, my daughter, I was breastfeeding at that point. But I remember sitting there and thinking, how could I have run this massive business and solve complex medical problems that other specialists could not do? I can't even make a simple decision. I felt like I was confused. I felt like I was literally moving in slow motion, through molasses every day. And I felt very alone, very isolated. Relationships, and we know that isolation is a tactic of abusers, but I felt very alone and very confused. And that was me personally my clients, and why most of them come to me is because they just don't want to have sex, which is another, that there's some intimacy issue going on. It's a point of contention in the relationship. And I just want to say, for those listening that have a higher desire, because sometimes abusers weaponize sex. They use sexual coercion, where they will be present or they will be kind when they're getting sex, or they withhold it as punishment, and they withhold their love as punishment. So anyways, there's a lot of like power games and things at play, but generally that's a big sign. Mismatched libidos in a relationship is another issue, and just not feeling seen, heard, believed, validated, and thinking that everything is your fault.
Yeah,
Is the
there you
number
go.
one sign of an abuser is a lack of accountability.
Yes, 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 exactly. Boy, I tell you, I could check every single one of those boxes. One more thing I will add to that is I remember that I went to a counselor because I was just overeating all the time. And it wasn't just like I was hungry or had an increased appetite. It was just this ridiculous, like insatiability, if that's a word. I needed just bad food. I mean, I would even have something at work, and then on my way home from work, I would stop in a drive-through and just get garbage food and just sit in my car in shame and eat it. And I was like, what is wrong with me? Why am I doing this? And I even went to a counselor and I said, what is wrong with me? I don't understand. I'm not hungry for it. I don't need it. I'm ashamed about it. I mean, it's affecting my body and my weight and my health. And she couldn't tell me because she wasn't trauma informed, but she did
Mm-hmm.
say, it's definitely not you. There's something going on. It's something else. But at that point, I did not know that I was in an abusive relationship. I thought I was just in a relationship with somebody who was broken, but they were trying and they were working on it, and I was going to be the hero, right? But I think that's another sign. If a woman is just trying to like either find pleasure or band-aid these emotions with
Yeah,
overeating or over.
wine, online shopping. Yes, I see
Exactly.
that all the time.
Yes.
That
And it
they're
becomes
seeking pleasure, dopamine, whatever you want to call it, like that satisfaction outside of themselves, because they're so unhappy and unfulfilled. But we don't know that really necessarily. Like, we don't know the cause. And yeah, it drives me nuts, because in that case, if somebody came to me as a clinician, it would go as your diagnosis, like code binge eating disorder, and we would treat it, right? Or but we would look at you, but no one's saying, okay, what is the relational system, or what is the environment that she's in? No one looks at the intimate partner
exactly,
generally as a source, right?
exactly.
Maybe it was childhood trauma, or but nobody is screening. Okay, I shouldn't say nobody, but very few
Very few.
therapists and doctors are informed of domestic violence. And again, I don't like that word either, but to the point that they would understand or know how to screen for coercive control. So
Exactly.
then you're thinking, there's something wrong with me. Why am I doing this? There was nothing wrong with you the whole time. It was the situation that you were in. And it was that nobody could name it for you and give you the tools to, give yourself agency back
Right.
and
Right.
get out of it. Yeah.
And I didn't even know how unhappy I was either. And that's so interesting because I've always been that Pollyanna, just make the best of it. It's all okay. It's going to be okay. These are good things for good. I mean, I did not even know how unhappy I was, honestly, until I left that 27-year relationship. And when I looked back, I couldn't believe how desperately unhappy I was. But nobody on the outside really had any idea how deep and how bad and how oppressed the environment around me was, including myself. So,
Yeah,
anyway,
I was the same way. I had no idea until I was out. And even when I was talking to my lawyer and she was saying, like, okay, and I think she knew, a little bit. This was a different lawyer than the one I'm with now. She knew, 'cause she doesn't go to court and trials, or else I would use her. But she knew that I was in danger. She's like a mediation lawyer, but she knew I was in danger, and she wanted me to make like a slow plan to get out. And I remember being on that call thinking like, what? Like, he's not going to kill me, or I don't, this isn't that. But anyways, but it was that bad. It was that bad. And I just had no idea at the time.
Yeah. Generally, those true colors come out when you leave. That's when you see the full force of the ugly, all of it, when they've lost control, or even inside the relationship, when you've put down boundaries and they've lost control, you start really seeing a different side. And it's pretty terrifying that you were living in that situation, the whole time.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. For me, it was the worst post-separation for sure. But there was moments, but I had no idea of the depth of it until after.
Wow. Well, thank you so much, Jordin, again, for what you're doing, for sharing your story with us. We're going to have all the links to your book and your podcast and the questionnaire as well. Is there anything else you'd like to share with our audience before you go?
There's nothing wrong with you, and it wasn't your fault.
Well said. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
If something in this conversation resonated with you today, pause for a moment. Confusion is not a character flaw. Burnout is not a weakness, and staying longer does not mean that you failed. Awareness changes everything. If this episode helped you name something you could not explain before, share with another woman who may need language for what she is currently experiencing. And remember, there is nothing wrong with you. You are not crazy, and it was not your fault. Please subscribe for more conversations that bring clarity to confusion and courage to healing. And we really appreciate that you took the time to join us today for our conversation with Dr. Jordin Wiggins. And we look forward to next time. Thank you, and I hope you have a wonderful day.